Okay, welcome to lecture number 7, and we are going to look into the for loop in this lecture. You have already covered loops, so there's not much to explain in this lecture apart from how the for loop syntax works and what is a template for that. And apart from that, like if you want to really understand how the for loop works, so I would strongly recommend that you stick around and look at the coding section of this lecture, and that is where the most of the information will be given to you. So I would strongly recommend that you look into that part of the lecture. And for this lecture, you just look at how the syntax of the for loop works. So the for loop is not fundamentally different from the while loop. It, however, allows us to write a more compact loop, and the program becomes more readable. So the whole point behind the for loop is that you make the loop very compact, and so it's very easy to read and see like what the loop is doing. Uh, so generally in loops, you have a control variable that you initialize before the start of the loop. So what this means is that normally you might have seen that I always initialize the variable I. So that was a control variable, and the loop was working like was running because of that control variable. Then the loop continues to check the boolean condition at every iteration. So yes, so there always was a boolean condition at the top. So the loop always checked that condition, and it used to move forward if the condition was true. And I was always incrementing the control variable like I at the end of the loop. So normally this is how all loops are written. There are exceptions, but normally this is how the loops are written. The for loop also follows the same scheme like the just scheme I just told you, but the only difference is that all of these initialization, the checking of the boolean condition, and the increment that happens in just one line. That one line is actually a combination of three separate statements. So we can see that in the next slide. Over here you can see like the for loop the first so there are semicolons. Now we know that in C++ and in Java the semicolon tells us like where our first statement is terminating. So over here you write the first statement, which in this case is will be int I is equal to 0, and then you will check if the Boolean expression expression can be I is equal to certain value, if I is less than certain value, if I is greater than certain value. So you will write over there in the Boolean expression, and over here you will write the increment. Just keep in mind like this can be an increment, this can be a decrement, but over here generally you normally use it as an increment. So you will write I is equal to I plus 1 over here, or I plus plus over here, or I plus equal to 1 over here. So then you will write all your statements over here, and since these statements are within these braces, so these will be executed. Now if I want to do the same thing in the while loop, so I will do the same thing, something like this. I will initialize the variable. I will use a boolean expression over here. I will write the statement, and at the end of the while loop I will write the increment. So this is how I will do it in the while loop. So there is not much difference between the for loop and the while loop. The only difference is like how you write the initialization, the boolean expression, and the increment over here. So here's an example. Over here I have for int I equal to 4, I is less than 10, and I is equal to I plus 1. So you can see like this is the increment, there's no semicolon, so there is no semicolon at the end of this statement. Just keep that in mind. So this checks if I is less than or equal to 2 or 10, and it is starting from the variable from the value 4. So what this means is like when it's going to print, it's going to write 4 and then value hello. So it's going to say fourth hello, fifth hello, sixth hello, seventh hello, eighth hello, ninth hello, 10th hello, and that is where it's going to the code is going to end, because 10 is less than equal to 10. So this condition is true, but as soon as it jumps towards the value 11, this loop will break. Another thing that you can keep in mind is that there are no braces written over here. So just like an if else, if you do not have any braces written, it will execute one statement right after the for loop. So it will always include this statement in the for loop, and it is going to print those values. Like it is going to just print this value afterwards. So it's just going to execute this one line of code. Okay, so this takes us to the code review, and that is where the real fun starts. And I strongly recommend that you look into the code review and see like what I have done over there. Okay, now we are going to look into the for loop and how that loop can be used. I'm going to I'm going to explain a few more things which are covered in the book. So I think that this lecture is going to be good for the people who want to understand like how the loops work, especially the for loop. So first of all, let's start with a very basic example. I want to have a for loop which just prints 5 numbers on the screen. So first of all, I say that okay, I will write the first of all the for loop, and then I will write the initialization. So I initialize the variable I over here, and I put it equal to 0. So the I is gets initialized from 0. So then I put a semicolon. So that is the completion of the first statement, the initialization. And then I write that if I is less than 5, so as long as I is less than 5, so that is the Boolean condition that this for loop checks. And finally, I'm going to write the increment. So the increment happens like I plus plus. I can also write it equal to I plus equal to 1. So I can write it like this, and this is also a valid way of writing the for loop. Normally we write I plus plus, so that's the most general term that we use. And then over here I write system uh, dot out dot print ln print. Let's make it print ln, and I print the value of I. Okay. So once I build this, we build this program. It will just write 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we do this. I run this, and you can see that it just writes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 over here, just as I had predicted. Now, a few things that you should keep in mind is that first of all, just like an if statement, if you remove the brackets, uh, for loop will only execute the statement, the one statement right after the for loop. So in this case, it's going to just execute the statements, not any statement afterwards. So for example, if I write instead of I write suppose it just prints 0. Okay, so in this case you would think that it will just print 0, then 0, then 1, then 0, then 2, then 0, then 3, then 0. No, it will just execute, it will just write all the lines over here, and then afterward it will print the line, this line. So if I run this, so 0 will be printed once. So if I run it now, so you can see like 0 will be printed once. Now if I want it to be printed multiple times, so what I have to do is I have to place this in brackets, and then the 0 will be printed multiple times. So because now it has become the part of loop. So this is one thing that you should understand, you should know. Apart from that, this for loop, you may seem that this for loop happens this way, but it can be written in many other ways. But first of all, I should explain a few things about the scope of the variable. Now, if you define any variable within the for loop, so that variable is not visible to the entire program. It's only visible to this for loop. So what I mean by this is that if as long as I'm using the I variable inside the for loop, it's okay. But as soon as I put it outside the for loop, the program will not understand like from where this I came from. So if I run this, you will see that I will get an error. Okay, so I got an exception. I cannot be resolved to a variable. It could not understand like what happened over here. But if you want to do something like this, what you can do is you can write integer I like this. So now you have declared an integer I outside of the for loop, and since it has been declared outside of the for loop, it's giving me an error that I'm using the same variable over here and I'm redeclaring that variable. So I will have to remove the integer from here, and as a result now this I is the same as this I, and now if I run this, it's going to print all the values of I, and then it's going to print this. So if I run this now, it's not going to give me an error. You can see like it's just printed, now it went all the way to 5. So now you can see like why did it print 5 over here? It printed 5 over here because over here I set I equal to 0. So I just declared I had no value, and then I put I is equal to 0, so the I was initialized with the 0 value, and and every iteration, so in the first iteration I is 0, and when the loop goes back, it does I plus plus, I becomes 1, then I becomes 2, I becomes 3, I becomes 4, and when I becomes 5, so it becomes equal to 5, and this Boolean condition becomes false, so this loop will terminate. So once this loop is terminates, the value of I will still remain 5, so that's why it just prints the value 5 over here in this case. So that is why this has happened. Now let me undo this, and now there are a few more things that I should let you guys know. Like this is the normally the general syntax that the for loop uses, but you can write the for loop in many other ways. One of the ways is that you cut this out, you take this out, and you place it over here. So now I have declared and initialized the I variable outside the for loop. But if you do this, you need to put the semicolon over here. Okay, that for the for loop always looks for this semicolon. So either you write this statement inside, or you put this I variable, this initialization outside the for loop, and then you run the for loop. So if I run it now, you can see that this still works the same way. And another thing I can do is I can remove this increment value from here, and I place it over here, and still this loop will work if I run this. So this loop will only check for I this boolean condition, and I need to put these semicolons over here. If I remove any one of these semicolons, it will not work. So this is another way of writing the for loop. It's not the preferable way, but you can still write it this way, and you might come across something like this when you are looking somebody else's code. It may, like, people normally don't do this, but it may happen that maybe in some interview they write something like this, and you're totally flabbergasted, like what has happened. Uh, Another thing that you can do is you can remove this statement from here, and you do I plus plus over here. So now I have removed the increment from here, and I have done the increment over there. So now the question is, like, when it is going to print, what is it going to print? Is it going to print 0, or is it going to print 1? Because we are incrementing the value, so this specifically makes I equal to 1. So what you should keep in mind, like, you can increment the value of I this way, and you can also increment the value of I uh, this way. So this is called post increment, because you're incrementing after, and this is pre increment because you're incrementing before. So in this case, since it's post increment, so once this line is executed, only then the value of I will be increased. So let me show you that. Let's run this, and you can see that uh, it works fine, and it shows me 0 1 2 3 4, just like the last time. So it's showing me this statement, and I can change this into pre-increment. In this case, it will increase the value of I first, and then it's going to print the value. So if I run this now, you can see, like, what I mean, and now it's going to give me 1 2 3 4 5. So you should keep in mind, like, plus plus I and I plus plus, they are not the same. But another interesting thing is that if I take this out and put it over here, so instead of doing plus plus I plus plus, I do plus plus I. Now you would assume that now it will increment the value of I first, and then it will move forward. No, even now, if I use plus plus I plus plus over here, it means the same thing. So if I run this now, I will still get 0 1 2 3 4 5. Now you should be very careful, like, why this is happening. Like, you should be very careful how C++ works. Okay, so in case you are not sure, just run the program and see, like, what it does. Just don't assume, like, how the program works. And you can also see, like, I haven't put a semicolon over there, and that this is how the format for loop works. So now let's look at some other example. So what I do is, I'm doing is, like, I start with I with the value of 5, and as long as I is greater than 0, I decrement I. So I do I minus minus. So in this case, the loop will run in reverse. It will start with 5, and it will go to 4, then 3, then 2, and then to 1. And now if I run this, So it's look, it's go 5 4 3 2 1. So now you can run the same loop but in the opposite direction. And this is like you can also use this for loop this way. So in this way case the loop is going to like count down. We can write it we can say like, okay, how about we write a factorial. So in case of factorial, what happens is that you always do like 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So what you would like to do is that every time you want to multiply 1 with 2, 2 with 3, 3 with 4, 4 with 5. So we can do the same thing this way. We can write, okay, let's make it we write int fact, let's make it int fact, and we write uh, we make this equal to 1. Okay, so now we are going to do is fact is equal to I into fact. So now when we run this course, so the value of I is in the beginning is 5. So 5 into 1, I get 5. It gets stored into fact, and then the next time I will be 4. 4 into 5 will be 20. Then the next time 20 into 3 will be 60. 60 into 2 will be 120, and that is where it's going to end, because even though we are going to multiply with 1, we are not going to get the answer. So we don't need to print it over here. All we need to do is print the factorial after once all the computation is done. So we write it like this. If we run it this way, so you can see I got 120. Now you may say like, okay, this is 5 4, so this seems odd because we are multiplying fact with 1, like 5 with 1, and we are going all the way down. So normally it's 5 4 3 2 1 and then 1. So 5 4 3 2 and then 1. So you can make the same thing work by making I equal to 1, and we are doing I plus plus, and we do uh, 1. We can do fact equal to 1. So we can make it work this way as well. So now in the beginning fact is 1, 1 into 1 is 1, and then the next time I will be 2, we will get 2, then I will be 3. So we can make it work like this. So we initialize with 2, and I is greater than I is less than and equal to 5, because we want to get the 5 there as well, because we want to get the 5 factorial. So in this case we are going to do okay, let's make it 1 into 2 into 3 into 4. So let's make it fact into I. Okay, so now fact will be 1 1 into 2, and then 2 into 3, and then 3 into 4, and then 4 into 5. So now we will get 120 again. So you can see like we can find the factorial by using a for loop, uh, and uh, uh, and either we go in one direction or we go the other direction. It's all about how you make the computation. Now if I want to convert this into a while loop, so what I will have to do, I will have to make this while, and I will need to declare the integer I equal to 2 outside. So I make it int I equal to 2, and then I need to remove this because I have to increment within uh, within the while loop. So now I is 2. I think this seems fine. So if I run this now, I should also get 120. Okay. Uh, so I got the value 120 again, and you can see like this like I can do the same thing with the for loop, and uh, and um, but you can see like the loop has been expanded a bit. The for loop was much more compact, but the while loop is not that much compact. So this is like how you do the for loop, and now I would recommend that you guys do some exercises, get used to the for loop, and start using it in your programs. So that's about it for today. I hope to see you in the next class.